Tonight on Bridge City News, it has been exactly 1 year since cannabis was legalized in our country. Lethbridge Police discuss some of the challenges they face since pot was legalized. We head inside of the Lethbridge Police Department to learn more about some of the training firefighters go through. And the gloves are off on the campaign trail. Hear what some of the federal leaders had to say as we inch closer to Monday's federal election.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Police raided a house in Lethbridge on 43rd Street South earlier today. Evidence was collected from the home. Lethbridge police are not able to disclose what was taken, but officers say the search is in connection with an incident which took place on Wednesday evening.
Yesterday evening we responded to a report of a robbery, personal robbery with some weapons involved at a separate location. It's actually at one of our local motels. Follow up to that investigation, identified some suspects, and as we followed our leads, it led us to a residence here where we just executed a search warrant. Searching for evidence in relation to that robbery offense.
LPS says that several people are in custody and are currently being questioned. The names of those involved have not yet been released. Police in Medicine Hat raided 2 homes and seized 347 grams of cocaine, over $37,000 in cash, and weapons including knives and brass knuckles. 34-year-old Shane Peters faces a long list of charges, including possession of drugs for the purpose of trafficking, possession of a prohibited weapon, and breach of a court order. Exactly 1 year ago today, cannabis was made legal in Canada. Now, when it comes to drug-related charges behind the wheel, Lethbridge police say it's very difficult to determine how many offences there have been.
A lot of our tests for the drug exams on a suspected impaired driver by drug, they're still being analyzed by the lab. It takes a long time to get those back. So some of those I don't have the answers for, but what I can tell you is we've had about 14 exams in the last year, so just over one a month that is drug impaired driving related. Obviously we still have a lot of alcohol related impaired driving as well.
As of today, it is now legal to purchase, sell, and produce edibles and extracts as well. The Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services held their fire investigations training with new recruits today. BCN's Loris Alexander stayed informed in the training of the roles and responsibilities of the rookie responders.
A lot of professions require constant training to ensure your skill set stays sharp, but it takes an even deeper meaning when your job involves saving lives.
Their safety is obviously first and foremost in making sure that they are safe when they're putting the fire out, but we also want them to look at any signs or signals that might be malicious activity, like multiple points of ignition or the color of smoke or the color of the fire.
When you're able to actually come out on the training ground, light something like this, and then go in, and they'll go in shortly and they'll take a look and you can see the damage that a fire causes, but at the same time, you can also see how the area can be preserved. You probably noticed that we didn't use a whole lot of water on this. We don't need to use a whole lot of water. In a lot of situations, it's just quick bursts getting the fire out.
It's kind of cool to see firsthand and to get some hands-on training with what we're doing. We're learning a lot about fire investigation and different causes and different patterns that we're looking for. It's kind of new training. I think the old school mentality is you go in, you put the wet stuff on the hot stuff, as everyone says. But now we're really learning how to look for different patterns, different structures inside that kind of give us clues that we can relay to fire prevention and really help us dial in on the cause of the fire.
The 12-week course focuses on both firefighting and emergency services training. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
Now that Lethbridge has a population of over 100,000 people, there are some big city problems that come with that distinction. Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman spoke at SACPA earlier today about certain issues the city is facing.
Keeping up with growth. I get people complaining about construction all the time. And of course, the more roads we have, the more construction we're going to have, and the more traffic volume we have, the more maintenance we'll have. And certainly until we get those needed supports to deal with the drug issue, until we get people moving into treatment and recovery on a more frequent basis, we'll always have those type of social problems. Interestingly, our needle distribution is down by 75 to 80% from what it was 2 years ago. The risk is much lower, and we're gathering more needles than are being distributed.
Mayor Spearman stopped by our studios as well recently and had lots to say on our city's drug crisis and affordable housing. Watch that full interview with BCN's Paul Arthur coming up after Business News. Changes still need to be made to Alberta's trucking regulations. Now that's according to the families affected by the tragic Humboldt Broncos bus crash. On April 6th of last year, 16 people died and 13 others were injured when a Calgary truck driver slammed into the team's bus near Tisdale, Saskatchewan. 5 families joined Alberta NDP opposition leader Rachel Notley to support her call for an emergency debate on the issue. The families say they are upset by changes to training and testing requirements for new truck drivers.
You know, this topic is got to be of the utmost priority, and every time we put an inexperienced driver on the road, like seriously, we're literally flipping that coin. And so we've got to just stop and make sure that they realize, the government realizes that, you know, we can't waste a day here. We know within the prairie provinces, they have had, you know, some delays in getting the stricter driving training done, but they haven't made the exemptions, and there's so much uncertainty in Alberta right now because we don't know where this government's going to go with that. So today we just wanted to stand solid to say that it needs to be taken seriously, and there should be absolutely no exemptions, and training and safety can't be compromised.
It's been over a year and a half since we lost our brother and my mom lost her son, and like, this isn't about NDP versus UCP. This is about safety, and the longer we discuss this issue, the longer inexperienced drivers are on the road and another person could lose their life. My brother was 18 and he didn't get to do a lot of things that my sister and I are going to be able to do. I don't want another 18-year-old or another child or another adult to lose their life because of money. Like, we're talking about costs here.
RCMP say a man is dead after being hit by a train just outside of Red Deer. Police say the collision occurred yesterday in Black Falls. Mounties say the name of the 53-year-old Red Deer man will not be released, and police are still investigating. A group of hunters and 2 children who went missing have been found safe in northern Manitoba. Police say the 2 adults and 2 kids, aged 12 and 16, were dropped off on October 8th near Mosquito Lake. They were to be picked up by a chartered float plane on Friday, but the plane could not land due to poor weather. There were concerns because the group only had enough food for a few days. RCMP say they were found late yesterday on the shore of the lake. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau recently received an endorsement from former U.S. President Barack Obama. Obama tweeted his support for Trudeau yesterday, just days before we head to the polls. Trudeau refuses to say whether or not he asked Obama for that endorsement.
The last time I spoke with Barack Obama was in the spring when he came to Ottawa. We talked about how we're going to continue to fight for things that matter for people around the world, like the fight against climate change. I was obviously happy to hear his words yesterday, but nobody tells Barack Obama what he should do. We are focused on electing a strong Liberal government that is going to be able to continue the hard work of fighting against climate change and investing in families. And the choice is very, very clear for Canadians.
The gloves are coming off as the federal election campaign nears its end. Justin Trudeau is accusing Andrew Scheer of running a nasty campaign. Meanwhile, Scheer says Trudeau lacks ethics and is unfit to govern. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Quebec reminiscing about the late NDP leader Jack Layton, and Green Party leader Elizabeth May is predicting a minority government.
Canadians will head to the polls and decide whether or not Justin Trudeau deserves to remain Prime Minister. And over the last 4 years, he has demonstrated time and time again that he is unworthy of that office. He is unworthy of the trust Canadians placed in him 4 years ago to respect taxpayer dollars and safeguard our democracy against corruption. His ongoing scandals and cover-ups have caused Canadians to lose faith in the integrity of their government.
Jack was someone that was able to win over the hearts of Canada, Canadians, win over the hearts of Quebecers. And he did that not just with his personality, which was pretty amazing, and not with just his ability to connect with people, but because of his values of fighting social injustice and to defend our planet and the environment.
Being careful with your vote means you should vote for what you want. We have 6 different political parties that are very likely to return members of Parliament at the end of this election. We're looking at polls that have been very stalled at a deadlock, but in the popular vote, a virtual tie between Conservatives and Liberals. For that matter, a virtual tie between NDP and Greens. But the point is, right now, we're looking at a minority parliament.
A two-day bail hearing took place in Ottawa today for former RCMP intelligence analyst Cameron Ortis. He's accused of violating the Security of Information Act for allegedly trying to disclose classified information to a foreign entity or terrorist group. He must demonstrate whether he should be freed on bail while he awaits trial. The proceedings are currently under a publication ban. A senior delegation led by U.S. Vice President Mike Pence paid off as the United States and Turkey have agreed to a ceasefire in northern Syria. Turkish President Erdogan and his military have been fighting with Kurdish forces in the region. During two meetings between the countries, the U.S. warned Erdogan that Turkey would face additional economic sanctions if it did not halt the assault on the Kurdish forces. Those forces were once allied with the United States in its fight against the Islamic State. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson hammered out a last-minute compromise Brexit deal with his European counterparts today. This raises the prospect that Britain could finally be out of the European Union by October 31st. The difficult part is now that Johnson will have to win approval for this draft deal in Parliament. That begins with a rare sitting at the House of Commons on Saturday. The 27 ambassadors to the EU have been asked to stick around Brussels over the weekend so they can handle any fallout from the British Parliament votes. It was on this day that mobster Al Capone is convicted of tax evasion, an Arab oil embargo fuels the energy crisis, and a deadly earthquake rocks Northern California. This is Today in History for October the 17th.
October 17th, 1973. Dawn of the energy crisis, as Arab oil-producing nations say they will cut back on oil exports to Western nations and Japan. The result? A total embargo until the following year, bringing severe oil shortages and rising inflation to the United States and other countries. 1777, a turning point in the Revolutionary War. British forces under General John Burgoyne surrender to American troops in Saratoga, New York. The victory persuades the French to side with the Americans against the British during the war. 1989, a deadly earthquake measuring 7.1 on the Richter scale strikes Northern California. The quake kills more than 60 people, leaving 12,000 homeless and causing $6 billion in damage. 1931. Mobster Al Capone is convicted of income tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. Capone is released 8 years later. And 1915. Playwright Arthur Miller, author of Death of a Salesman and The Crucible, is born in New York City.
You go to theater because it's giving you news of some kind that applies to today. And it's a rare thing that can outlast its moment. It's very difficult.
Today in History, October 17th. Tim McGuire, The Associated Press.
You know, it was also on this day that my lovely wife Julie was born. Happy birthday, hon. And I remember the day, and I forgot the year, just like you asked. We had lots of sun mixed with cloud, but mild again today. The warmer temperatures will be sticking around. Complete weather details are coming up. We had lots of cloud cover again today, but double-digit temperatures. Tonight, just a few clouds developing with a low near 3. Mainly sunny tomorrow with a high expected near 12. Partly cloudy on Saturday with a high of 10. Sunny and 9 degrees for Sunday. Election Monday, we should see a mixture of sun and cloud and a high near 9 degrees. Tuesday, the mercury should climb a few degrees to 12. Wednesday, cooling off slightly with a high near 9 expected. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 14 and an average low of 0. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1963 at 26 degrees, and the record low was minus 10 in 1992. Sunrise was at 7:55, sunset at 6:38. Looking at the temperatures across the country now, Victoria will be mainly rainy and 12. Expect lots of rain as well, and 11 degrees for Vancouver. Clearing and 11 for Calgary. A mixture of sun and cloud and 12 for Edmonton. Clearing and 14 for Regina. 1 degree warmer at 15 degrees in Saskatoon. A slight chance of showers and 10 for Winnipeg on Friday. Mainly cloudy and 12 for Toronto. Overcast and 9 for Ottawa. Montreal had a rainfall warning today. Tomorrow mostly cloudy and a high of 8. Expect 12 and rain in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Halifax, Nova Scotia had a storm and wind warning today. Tomorrow, good chance of rain developing and a high near 14. Charlottetown should have showers and 13. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect periods of rain and a high near 14 degrees for Friday. A group of Alberta oil and gas supporters say they will hold a counter-protest when climate activist Greta Thunberg attends a climate change rally in Edmonton tomorrow. The group United We Roll is urging everyone connected to the energy industry to, quote, show Greta we do not need her yelling at us. Environmental advocacy group Climate Justice Edmonton says Thunberg will join hundreds of Edmonton youth and community members at a rally at the Alberta Legislature tomorrow. There's been a large recall on raw beef and veal products. Canada's Food Inspection Agency issued safety warnings about items sold at various restaurants and retail outlets, including Walmart and the gourmet food chain Pusateres. The agency says its investigation continues into the Toronto slaughterhouse Riding Regency Meatpackers. The company had its license suspended on September 17th due to possible E. coli contamination. Now, at the time, the agency said the facility failed to implement effective control measures. The CFIA recall has grown to involve 665 meat products sold to grocery stores and 625 items sent to hotels and restaurants. There's also been a food recall warning for various ready-to-eat dry sausages due to salmonella. The recall products' brand names are Venetia and Felicetti. More information about all recalls can be found on the Canadian Food Inspection Agency website. Whether it is a nervous investor looking for a safe haven or someone looking to make a big purchase, investors need to shop around to find the best rates on their cash balances. The difference in the rates may seem small, but if the cash balance is large enough, the interest can really add up.
It's always good for Canadians to have a diversified approach when it comes to their savings, their day-to-day financing. Having some sort of a fallback in a cash account is important for several reasons. Again, depending on the objectives they have. If they're expecting a major life event to happen, say a purchase of a house or a wedding, or just the fact that they want to feel secured to have access to some cash in case of emergency. You do have different options. When you think about conventional saving, you do have interest or higher interest earning accounts, basic saving accounts. And to encourage Canadians to save, banks usually would allow you to earn more interest as you save more. That being said, under the TFSA, the tax-free saving account umbrella, and the RSP umbrella, you do have the alternative as well to park the money in a cashable account. So those accounts, do earn a modest interest rate, but they are accessible again within the boundaries of the registered accounts.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down slightly on the day to 16,426. The Dow was up almost 24 points to 27,025. The Nasdaq was up almost 33 points to 8156, and the S&P 500 was up just over 8 points to 2997. Oil was up 73 cents to 54.09 per barrel. Natural gas was up 2 cents to $2.32. Gold was up $1.94 to $14.92 per ounce. Silver was up 16 cents to $17.56. Wheat is at $219 per metric ton. Barley's at $218. Canola's at $4.60, and corn is at $288 per metric ton. Live cattle was up 5 cents to $112.50. Feeder cattle was down $1.03 to $1.45, and lean hogs were down $2.48 to $70.40. The Canadian dollar was up slightly on the day to 76 cents US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, police in Medicine Hat raided 2 homes and seized 347 grams of cocaine, over $37,000 in cash, and weapons including knives and brass knuckles. 34-year-old Shane Peters faces a long list of charges, including possession of drugs for the purpose of trafficking, possession of a prohibited weapon, and breach of a court order. Affordable housing, an effective drug strategy, and burnt-out EMS staff. Those are a few of the topics BCN's Paul Arthur discusses with Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman. That interview is on deck. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Southern Alberta Crime Stoppers is holding their first ever 5K Color Fun Run on Saturday, October 19th from 9 to 11 a.m. at Legacy Regional Park in Lethbridge. All proceeds to go to Southern Alberta Crime Stoppers. For more information about the run and volunteer opportunities, email lcsa1983@gmail.com or visit Southern Alberta Crime Stoppers Facebook page. Family Center's Parent Advisory Council and Exhibition Park invite you to come to the 5th Tastic Boo Bash on Saturday, October 26th from 1 to 4 p.m. at Exhibition Park West Pavilion. Come with your family, dressed up in your best costume, and enjoy crafts, games, a bouncy castle, photo booth, and so much more. There is no admission charges or parking fees. For more information, visit famcenter.ca. The City of Lethbridge's residential fall leaf collection program is underway from now to November 15th. Residents can call 311 Monday to Friday between 8 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. to arrange for pickup. Leaves must be put in paper yard waste bags and placed in the area where garbage is normally collected. Paper yard waste bags are available for purchase at retail stores throughout Lethbridge. For more information about the residential fall leaf collection program, visit lethbridge.ca or call 311. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The city of Lethbridge continues to do relatively well economically, but also continues to struggle with a serious opioid crisis. As other cities do, struggles to get enough affordable housing in place as well. Joining me in studio to discuss this and more is Mayor Chris Spearman. Good to have you with us again.
I'm happy to be here, Paul.
You bet. Well, let's jump into the opioid crisis. I mean, it's always an ongoing issue, of course, for many cities across Canada, and Lethbridge has a serious problem with it, obviously. Recently, we've heard from EMS, paramedics, of course, just sharing the high number of calls that they have to deal with, and overdoses, and so it's just kind of taking a toll on them, right? So they're talking about possibly, is there a way to get more staff, more ambulances? I'm not sure exactly what the solution is, but we do have to say hats off to our EMS people. They're doing an amazing job.
They are on the front line, and you have to empathize with what they're facing every day, the frustrations they have dealing with sometimes the same clients over and over again. And this issue without resolution is they're suffering. We have been asking for additional resources from the health minister, and it's a challenge to get them. Yeah, of course. The provincial government is one level removed from what's happening in communities, and their focus right now is on managing the financing. I think we need to continue to put the pressure on that we need to have additional resources here in the city of Lethbridge.
Right, and of course with the provincial budget coming out next week as well, right after the federal election, I guess we'll find out what we get. I know there's, promises, of course, money set aside for recovery beds, detox beds. That would be great to get some of that here. It would seem obvious that Lethbridge needs more than the average city in Alberta. Have you heard anything, any rumblings at all, any kind of leaks as to what we might get from the province?
I haven't, and those are always the provincial government's prerogative to announce those. We certainly have been making the case on a regular basis that we need supports. Our needs on a per capita basis are higher than any other city in the province, and hopefully Lethbridge will get the resources that it needs. Providing us with low quality, low caliber resources would certainly not help us resolve the problem in the long run. We need to have resources that are of the same quality as the ones that are available in Calgary and Edmonton. So we continue to need adequate detox, adequate intox. We need to have treatment facilities that are barrier-free, and we need to make sure that people get on the road to treatment and recovery. That's the only way to relieve the stresses in the long run that are happening to those people on the front lines today.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to see. We need to find a solution here, absolutely.
The number of addicts who are under age 25 are more than half. We can't write off a whole generation of people. We need to make sure that those people get the treatment that they deserve, and they get shown the way to a life that is beneficial and full of hope. So right now there's no hope. There's no way out of this drug addiction issue for those people without those barrier-free accesses to treatment and recovery.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, boy. All right, well, let's switch gears here a little bit to the Municipal Housing Strategy Implementation Plan. And mind you, this does tie in with some of this, what we were just chatting about here as well. Because I understand there is a need for more affordable housing, of course, and smaller units in that. So, so you're looking ahead down the road here, future neighborhoods being built and so forth. Tell us a bit about that.
So the City of Lethbridge, we spent a year and a half developing our municipal housing strategy. It's been brought to us initially in March of this year, which was approved by Council, and it came back again a couple of weeks ago, and we've said implement it. Let's get going forward. Our challenge is finding municipal partners to work with it. So we need organizations coming forward who can qualify for the federal government grants. We're one of the few municipalities that has a strategy in place that's been done in the detail that we have done ours. We know what the needs are, at what level, and they are significant. You know, we've got hundreds of people that need housing. More than 200 are homeless that we've identified. I think the number is 232. We've got over 400 that are struggling to maintain housing because of their housing needs, and we need to provide suitable housing for them. We need to take the data in this report. We need to work with a community organization and probably private builders to develop applications to qualify for federal funding supports.
Okay.
So we need those community organizations who qualify for the federal grants to make the applications. We'll help them. We'll help them write the applications to make sure that we get funding approvals. We need to make sure that we provide housing. When people have housing, that's the first step to resolving other social issues. They need housing so that they can be supported, and then that way they can get trained and contribute meaningfully to our society.
Yeah, you could have a stable base to operate out of, right? Absolutely. And so you're planning ahead, even in these neighborhoods down the road. You're planning ahead that there will be a place for transitional housing and so forth.
Exactly.
So I think it's wise.
It's really important. Given the dimensions of the problem we have, it has to be a priority. And we have all the information in place so that we can qualify for funding. The city itself won't there's no way we can qualify for the grants, but our housing organizations can. And we need to partner them with the local building community to provide the housing that the city needs.
Excellent. Now, construction has started on the new downtown 608 Health Project. This is part of the TRIP, so Targeted Redevelopment Incentive Program. Tell us a bit about how that works.
So what we want to do is make sure that existing buildings in the downtown are redeveloped and repurposed. And that requires sometimes a significant investment. In this case, it's about $4.85 million to repurpose an existing building and turn it into a professional medical center, offering additional medical services. And so that investment has to be repaid in some way. And in order to incent the investment, we've provided a 7-year tax holiday on the improvements. So they will still pay the tax that they currently pay, but in terms of the improvements that they invest, the $4.85 million, that won't be subject to taxation for 7 years. So getting that incentive hopefully will encourage that business and others to do something similar. We have a number of incentive programs for businesses who choose. The downtown residential incentive program is another one. Those who choose to upgrade existing facilities, we want to make sure that we have a vibrant downtown and that buildings that are aging become repurposed. So that's
a win-win then. Yeah,
it is. And then, of course, we've got the downtown clean and safe strategy that we continue to provide and supplement to make people feel comfortable that we haven't forgotten the downtown.
Okay, excellent. Now, at the recent Alberta Urban Municipalities Association convention, the city had made some proposals, and 2 of these city policies were actually accepted by the AUMA, so they'll be lobbying the province on this. One of them had to do with opposing the national mortgage stress test. Tell us about that.
We want to make sure that our housing industry is supported, and they're telling us that the stress test is basically reducing the buying power, especially of first-time homeowners. We want to make sure that our housing industry is healthy and that there are no barriers to owning homes. The national stress test was brought in to address issues in cities like Toronto and Vancouver. We didn't have those issues in the city of Lethbridge, and we want to. But by having a national stress test, it unfairly impacted our home buyers, and so we think that the province of Alberta doesn't have to support the national stress test. And some of our financial institutions didn't have to adhere to that. So Alberta Treasury branches that's owned and operated by the provincial government could basically be exempted from the national stress test, and people could access mortgages through that organization.
Yeah, it just seems to be logical, you know, what you're saying there for sure. Lethbridge housing market, Southern Alberta, any thoughts? Still somewhat soft?
It's still soft, and we want to make sure that that is a vibrant industry. They employed a lot of tradespeople, and we want to keep people employed and living in this area. We don't want them to think that they have to go somewhere else.
Okay. Your second resolution on provincial drug strategy. What is the AUMA going to be asking the province for on this particular issue?
So what we asked for was a provincial drug strategy that recognized local needs. And what we wanted to emphasize was a city like Lethbridge, where we really have very little other than the supervised consumption site, we need additional services. So that provincial drug strategy has to recognize what assets there are and what assets are lacking, and how can the provincial government support municipalities and cities like Lethbridge in addressing the drug crisis that's affecting everyone. So recognize that one size doesn't fit all, that what you're doing, don't focus on what already exists in Calgary and Edmonton, focus on what doesn't exist in a city like Lethbridge.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And now a couple of the city's resolutions were not accepted. You wanted to see more recycled plastics used in the production of new plastic. Explain that.
Well, some recycling programs suffer from not having homes for products. So instead of trying to ship our used plastics off to Asia and have those people manage our problem, is there a way that we could help with that issue, find homes for recycled plastic in Alberta by reusing plastic? And, you know, initially, could we target certain percentages, low percentages at the beginning, but ultimately, maybe in 5 or 10 years, get to maybe 15% of new plastic being produced from recycled plastic. So it's a way of managing our own issue. In the city of Lethbridge, we have developed a recycling program, and we have an up-to-date MRF. We're finding homes for a lot of our plastic, but that's not the case right across the province.
So some of the other municipalities didn't want to go for that because they don't have the same plan in place, I guess, or a place to put these things?
Well, I think it was plastics are developed from oil, and people are protective about the oil industry and wanting to keep that going as well. But I think there's room for both. In this case, the resolution wasn't accepted, and we'll see. We may try again at a future date. We thought it would benefit other municipalities more than it would benefit the city of Lethbridge, because we're much more successful in finding homes for our recycled plastic.
Yeah, interesting dynamics to some of these issues, for sure. You also wanted to see the organization lobby the government to make organ donation enrollment across the province, automatic, with the option, of course, for individuals to opt out if they so desired. That's an interesting one, and that was not approved. So any thoughts on that?
Well, we were inspired by Logan Boulay and his example. And then we saw the province of Nova Scotia make it automatic. And we thought, well, wouldn't the province of Alberta do that? Unfortunately, in Alberta, of course, many people value individual rights over collective rights. And I think that was the issue. We received 40% support. I think recognizing that about 80% of Albertans have not signed their donor cards. Logan Boulay was a wonderful example. I think he got 120,000 people to sign donor cards. That's great, but there's 4 million people living in Alberta, more than 4 million. If any one of us had a relative, many Albertans die every year needlessly waiting for organs to be donated. And many people go to the graves with their organs intact that could have gone to people and saved other lives. So I
appreciate your heart in that. I've signed mine. Okay, I encourage you to do the same. I think sometimes we wrestle with this, if I sign this, does that mean I'm going to die? Well, yes, you're going to die eventually, but signing this isn't going to cause your death to happen any sooner, right?
Yep, there are people in Lethbridge who have died and who are on waiting lists for organs. So they're our neighbors and our friends.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, Council here in Lethbridge voted to defer implementing the Green Cart Organics Recycling Program until at least 2020. But you yourself didn't vote for that. You want to see this getting going sooner than later, right? Do you want to chat about some of those dynamics?
Well, I'm never like to see things winding up in the landfill that could have a better purpose. Mm-hmm. Now that we have implemented the Blue Cart program, 57% of the content in our garbage bins is organic matter. Oh, okay. So that's food and yard waste. All of that doesn't have to go into the landfill. It doesn't have to create harmful methane gases and create liquid leachate that becomes an environmental liability. So I never like to see programs delayed. What it tells me is our priorities are not in the right order. People say we can't afford another cost. I don't think we need to incur another cost. We're going to be doing departmental reviews. The results of those will be coming out within 30 days. And I think we'll be offered opportunities to save money, and there will be opportunities to spend money on different capital priorities. I think implementing a green cart program would complete the suite, and we would have far fewer quantities of materials going into the landfill. So we could easily divert green matter to repurpose it and have it used in our fields locally as fertilizer, and the methane gases could be captured and used to generate energy. That technology already exists. So in the meantime, I will respect Council's decision.
It was made regarding then more of the cost element to it.
Yeah, the cost, saying we can't afford it at this time. We had a plan that we had all collectively approved, saying Blue Cart 2019, Green Cart 2021, and I hate to see us miss our targets. And if we don't review this until 2022, it won't be implemented till at least 2023, and that's a few more years of putting waste into the landfill that could have been avoided. I hope that we catch up with other communities and implement the full suite of recycling options for our citizens.
And when will this be revisited then?
When we review the capital plan for the city. So where will the $19 million come from to fund the capital, and then how can we fund the operating cost of this program? And I think both can be done at no additional cost to taxpayers.
Okay. Well, I'm running out of time. Always a delight to have you in the studio here, so thank you so much for making time for us today, Mayor Spearman.
I appreciate the opportunities, and anytime people have questions, please write to me, mayor@lethbridge.ca.
Our guest today is a Canadian history maker, becoming the very first Reform Party Member of Parliament, and later becoming Deputy Leader of the Reform Party under Preston Manning, Deborah Gray. So good to have you with us here on Bridge City News.
Thank you. It's fun. I'm glad to be here, and anybody under 30 is going to say, "Who's that old lady there?" But
a lot of our viewers know exactly who you are.
And I just had such a great run. Just wonderful.
15 years, I think, right?
I was in over 15 years. So I was in 15 years. I got elected in '89, left in the '04 election, and now all of a sudden I've been out 15 years. So I find it astounding when anyone says, "Oh yeah, Deb Gray, I remember you," and I get recognized for my voice as much as I do my face, which is aging, but
you look good.
Oh, thanks, it's great. I'm still riding a motorcycle, because I'm sure everyone who's watching us is saying, she rode a motorcycle, I wonder if she still does. Yes, I do. This is my 52nd year riding, and I'm loving it.
Oh, keep doing it as long as you can. I mean, that's great. Yeah, people remember you too for being sharp-witted. You know, you had a sharp tongue. Man, you know, you had some fun with that. And you have quite the history. I mean, your legislative assistant was a young fella named Stephen Harper.
Yeah. Well, of course, I had no idea I was going to win right on election night until in the by-election in '89 after the general election in '88. The Conservative fellow died, so we were thrown into a by-election situation right away. And so I had no idea I was going to win until I saw CBC, CTV, all the major networks drove out to little old St. Paul in northeastern Alberta in the middle of Beaver River. And I thought, what are these guys doing here? And they said, we think you're going to win. Wow. And I said, this was on by-election night. And I thought, well, really? Well, we'll see what happens. And I took 50% of the vote that night. So it was a big shock. I did not have staff lined up. In fact, I didn't even know what a member of Parliament actually did. So when I was in Ottawa interviewing a woman for the position, and she had worked for a Conservative MP before, but he didn't run again. And so I had no idea what an MP did. So I said, so tell me, what do you know about running an MP office? Because I knew nothing. So she gave me a little brief about that, about setting it up, and then who you're going to get for correspondence. I thought, yikes. And then she said, who are you going to get as your legislative assistant, the more political person? And so I thought, well, I really don't know. But I was in contact with Preston a lot, obviously, because there was a lot riding on it. You know, if you're going to have one MP there for 4.5 years till the next election, that was a little bit of pressure too. Because if you look or act like an idiot, chances are your career and everyone else's coming behind you is over as well. So he just cajoled and hornswoggled Stephen into coming down as my legislative assistant. And he said, I'll come for 1 year. He was in the middle of his master's degree in economics. And like I would never advocate anyone to quit, take a year off in the middle of university. But he did and came down and he said, I'll come for 1 year. And he did,
Incredible.
and what a big fat blessing that was for me.
I'll bet.
But I just appreciated Preston's incredible vision. I always say we're kind of always working, you know, 1 week, you know, maybe 1 year ahead. And Preston had this vision for a decade out. Same with Stephen. Just amazing foresight and long-term planning and a big, big vision for the country. We're seeing the same here with Jason Kenney in Alberta. You know, we hired Jason when he was a kid. I hired Stephen when he was a kid.
Wow.
I was 36 and he was 29.
Oh, man.
And then we hired Andrew Scheer when he was a kid. So when I'm the grand gray old lady of reform, it really is true to be so blessed to watch these people just come into their own in their political life, as certainly in the business of politics, but in the mission of saying this is our country. And we really believe in it, so that's why we're here.
What about Western alienation? Of course, that was a huge part of reform, and of course, it's big back to it's back big time now. I mean, it's a major issue here in Alberta and the prairies and so forth. What needs to change to give the West a sense that we're part of it? We're back in.
Yes. Well, that's right. I mean, we said the West wants in, then the West got in, and when you look at what's happening, SNC level, and if I go back to that. Justin was lobbying for, he said 9,000 jobs, turned out to be 3,500 that he was trying to save in Quebec. The last count I saw, and it's probably higher now, 130,000 unemployed in Alberta. And you go, woohoo, you know, how about us up here? What about us out here in Western Canada?
So a big part of this,
it's like it just ignored that. So I can see those sentiments coming forward.
Yeah. Big part of this then is the energy sector, essentially. I mean, you got Bill C-69, C-48. I mean, these are, in Alberta anyway, seen as economy killers.
Exactly. And just absolute bias towards Alberta with the pipeline and into BC and BC, where they've banned oil tanker traffic on the north coast of BC. Hello? There's the St. Lawrence. That's part of Canada. They have oil tankers in and out of there. Hibernia. If we're a country, we need to stand as a country, and that bill specifically deals with the north coast of BC. There's American tankers up there all the time.
Yeah, Alberta noticed that.
Alberta noticed that, yeah.
For sure. Now, I guess it seems like the Liberals are taking a gamble on this, that, you know, these kind of bills are going to resonate with voters who are particularly sensitive to the environmental issues, climate change, and again, some of the polls are showing that it's I think the number 3 issue in this election. So, you know, it's a gamble that may pay off for them. Do you think it'll work?
It may pay off for them. It may split the vote, some because the Greens come up and the NDP try and claim that territory. But it just makes me mad. I'm not going to sue and I'm not going to be deeply offended. But what the corollary of that is, we love the environment. You Conservatives don't love the environment. Well, that's just a bunch of hooey. I mean, to say that we don't appreciate the environment, we're all living, breathing the same air. And so, of course, Conservatives are concerned about that. What we're trying to do is be honest and balance environmental concerns with economic concerns, and to be able to say there's room for both of them in there. And so if they vote on that and try and be so self-righteous, and I find, sadly, so many of them are so humorless that you can't have a debate, but they're so self-righteous, I say, wait a minute, I actually care about the environment myself.
Okay, just have a different approach.
Exactly. And so this pipeline to get done, I was having a discussion just yesterday morning early with somebody who is riding her motorcycle actually up through Alberta right now. And she said that she thought there was some pipeline activity. And everyone who is up in arms about the pipeline. They need to do some more. This is as if this is going to be the first pipeline ever. In fact, it's twinning an existing one.
Right.
And in fact, I just Googled it yesterday. Canada has 840,000 kilometers of pipeline right now.
That's a lot of pipeline.
That's a lot of pipeline.
Yeah.
So this is nothing new. But I live on Vancouver Island now.
Well, you know all about the protests
I know all
there
about it.
and the green movement. So
we get our oil from Washington State.
Interesting. Wow.
You know, I mean, we have tons of oil in Canada. Clean oil, I might add.
You know what, compared to the world, I mean, I do have to say, you know what,
so
Canadian oil, Alberta oil is very, very clean compared to the rest of the world.
So somehow we need to be able to balance that, not way out on one side or the other.
Okay. Let me ask you about the Greens. You mentioned the Greens. And, of course, you're living in BC now. What do you think? I mean, the trend has been, again, they're starting to pick up momentum, right? You see it in the polls. You see some seats going their way. Could they gain a significant number of seats election night here on the on the West Coast and on the East Coast? Essentially, that's where their strength seems to lie.
There's a possibility for that. I mean, Elizabeth May's been in Parliament for quite a while now. She just doubled her caucus because this young fella, Paul Manley, won the seat in Nanaimo Ladysmith. Why was there a by-election? It's like playing chess. Leonard Krogh was an NDP MLA. Thought, oh, I'll be the mayor of Nanaimo, you know, so I don't have to go to Victoria all the time. So his seat's vacant. So then Sheila Malcolmson, NDP member of Parliament, says, oh, well, I might as well stay closer to home. So she comes to run in that, and it just goes round and round all the time here. But that fellow won a seat, and so she's just riding high right now. I think they'll gain in votes. I'm not sure that they're going to gain in seats. But if you have a minority parliament, as we do in BC right now, and it's just ugly, because you have 3 Green people that are absolutely calling the shots. They just sit back there and think, well, this is pretty cool. We have 3 seats, but we might as well be government, because they'll say yay or nay. I do not want to see that happen with either a Liberal minority or a Conservative minority.
You're hoping for a majority either way?
I'm hoping for a majority, because minority parliament, some stuff can get done, but it means that what we started talking about, you need rapprochement, you need to be able to get along together, and you need to be able to talk civilly and come up with bill by bill legislation. And there's so much animosity now, I don't know how well that could work. And I don't think Canadians want to go back to the polls again right away.
Let me ask you something, ties in a bit personally, I guess. You're a Christian. And you know, you've never really been shy about it, even when you were an MP. So these days, that can get you in a fair bit of trouble.
It can.
You know, certainly the media pounces on that as well, it seems. What advice would you have for anyone who's a politician and is a Christian in today's political climate?
When I think about, as a believer, I went to camp. I went to Bible camp at Camp Homewood when I was a 13-year-old kid. Knew nothing about the gospel, nothing about Jesus. I became a Christian when I was 14. And so that has been my life. That's my mission. And if that isn't the most important thing in your life, then you're hooped. So you probably shouldn't run for Parliament if you're going to try and hide your light under a bushel. But that doesn't mean to say that I need to be stupid or foolish about it, does it? So Preston talks about being wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And I think that's very smart, so that I would live my faith so that people realize that I'm not ashamed of it, but to be able to say I can work in this area and do the best job I can do, and that my life as a Christian would be a blessing to others, and that I would serve my country to the best of my ability. But I think it's important to be smart. It's the same in any industry. It's just that when you're in political life and public life, nothing about your life is private. And so you need to be able to, you know, say, this is going to go coast to coast. And I used to say to my caucus when I was the den mother for many years, anything you say, just assume it's going to be on camera, or just assume it's going to be on the front page of the Globe and Mail or the National Post.
Good advice.
So for a believer to be smart, and a believer to say, I am not going to compromise my positions. But again, as Preston used to say in the early days, life is about horse trading, isn't it? You do that in your family, you give some, you take some. And so that's what we
that
need
is
to
the
be
reality
able to do
in the
without
political world.
compromising my core beliefs.
Yeah.
And I will never shy away from telling anyone that I'm a Christian.
Social issues, we should touch base on that briefly too. I mean, there's always a fear campaign that gets launched in a political, election campaign against conservatives, it seems, mainly over abortion and LGBTQ issues and so forth. So we end up with some tap dancing, don't we, right? So on the one hand, you need to appease, I guess, the faith-based voters and supporters. And at the same time, there's this reassurance that you, typically send out to the rest of the supporters that no, nothing actually is going to change. It's going to stay the same. So you have this.
It's very difficult. It's a tightrope to walk. I struggled with this because we had an abortion vote way back when I was the only MP there. And again, Preston and I talked about this, and I thought what he said was very wise. From 1 Samuel 8, when Samuel said, look, they want a king. What am I supposed to do? They want a king. And the Lord said to them, you give them a king, and they are not responsible to you. They will be responsible to me in the end. That takes an awful lot of pressure out. That doesn't mean to say that you just go with whatever's going, but you take a stand, and people are ultimately responsible to God. And so I really appreciated that, and that has given me comfort and a lot of wisdom, I think, over the decades, not just the years.
Well, I've heard a number of faith leaders comment that, if any political leader today, whoever's in charge, actually decided to make abortion illegal, for example, you know what, we might say, oh, great, but reality is whoever did that in today's climate, the voters would boot them out very quickly, and it would not last. So ultimately, I think what they're saying is, you know what, if you want change, we can't actually leave that in the politicians' hands necessarily. That needs to come from the bottom up. When there's enough support from voters who say, you know what, we see this as a moral wrong and we need to change this, that's when politicians can actually do something about it.
And I would love to just legislate all kinds of things that say what, but Constantine did that too.
Right,
exactly. Said, okay, now it's a Christian nation. And it doesn't work that way. It needs to be heart to heart, person to person, communities standing up and saying that's when laws get changed.
Healthcare briefly, it's always a huge election issue, and everybody knows we need to fix it from all different parties, and we all make promises that way. So we throw money at it, and nothing changes, generally speaking. So your thoughts? How can it get fixed?
Do you keep throwing money at something? I mean, that has proved to not be very effective. And again, this all comes down to this whole we have single-tier healthcare system in Canada, as though we are so virtuous. Almost 30% of healthcare services are offered in the private realm. And so let's not fudge around that. So, if I go to, if I want an MRI and I want to pay for it, I'm allowed to do that. Paul Martin did that. He went to a clinic and they said you could wait in this line here, or we could get you over here. So he gave his credit card. Paul Martin did that as the Minister of Finance. So first of all, let's be brutally honest about this, that we don't have single-tier health care. We get to have some things covered. If you go to the chiropractor, you have to pay. If you go for massage, you have to pay. So it's not single-tier. But what we need to do is come up with a balance of what's going to work best for people, because we already have private public health care. And so somehow we need to come up with a balance of what's going to give us baby boomers good care. We are this enormous bulge in the population, born between 45 and 60 some, and that's me. I just turned 67 on July 1st, and somehow we're going to be all the people in the old folks' homes for the next years, and that's going to cost a fortune. So somehow we need to be able to balance that out and say we're not living under the myth that this is just single-tier healthcare. So money, energy, resources, time needs to go into figuring that out.
Yeah, somehow we seem scared of any privatization methods in Canada, even though countries like Sweden and Switzerland and the UK, very similar, I think mindset, that they seem to be doing that just fine.
Am I advocating for, for all private health care? No, I'm not. And someone will watch this program and say, oh, I heard Deb Gray, she's in favor of privatizing the health care. No, I'm not. No. But what I'm saying is, the truth is, it's already 30% is private.
Right. So again, a combination is what you're kind of what you would advocate.
Where you're going to be able to say we have these dollars and we have Deb Gray with bad knees, and where I live, they say to me, "Are you kidding?" I was 62 when I first went to the doctor, and she said, "Whoa, you're way too young. Come see me in a decade."
Wow.
But I can still ride my motorcycle, so I bless the Lord.
Deborah Gray, thank you so much for making time for us here today.
Right on. I'm glad to. And bless you and your ministry here too.
Thank you. Deborah Gray, wow, former MP, and just a ball of dynamite here, right? So on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thank you so much for watching today.